Hello, my name is Damon Friedman, co-founder and president of SOF Missions. As a 20-year veteran within Special Operations, I've gone through many challenges due to my military service and time in combat. We felt called to start SOF Missions to serve our fellow brothers and sisters in arms, focusing on suicide prevention and resiliency. Our mission at SOF Missions is to empower warriors to find purpose and be resilient. Since 2011, when we started the organization, almost 3 million men and women have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the scars of war take a toll on their psychological, physical, social, and spiritual health. Many veterans feel a sense of hopelessness and a loss of purpose when they return to civilian life. They feel isolated and alone, unable to reconnect. And in the greatest of tragedies, over 20 veterans lose all hope and take their own lives. Our goal at SOF Missions is to provide veterans the tools and resources so that they don't become a statistic. We offer a unique approach to combating veteran suicide through a whole health, intradisciplinary model. The Be Resilient program is a 4-pillar methodology that addresses the areas of psychological, physical, social, and spiritual wellness. We provide care through 3 delivery methods: medical clinics, retreats, and educational training. Since we started back in 2011, we have been able to reach veterans in all 50 states and have served over 3,000 veterans through the Be Resilient program. Being resilient is a multifaceted and complex issue. We know that to find a lasting solution, we have to address the whole warrior. Many challenges cannot be solved by providing the treatments and modalities of just one component, but by tackling them all. Now, we've expanded our services to include law enforcement and first responders. Together, we can make a lasting impact in the lives of warriors across the nation. To learn more, visit our website at sofmissions.org.
All right. Welcome back.
MisFitNation, the MisFitNation show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the MisFitNation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the MisFitNation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the MisFitNation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, Stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the MisFitNation show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the MisFitNation show. It's your Thursday after dinner edition. Thanks for taking some of your time tonight to hang out with us here. We know you have other things you could be doing. NFL starts tonight, and there'll be football until February. So everyone who loves football should be happy now, but you could take 1 hour out of your time to hang out with us. And those who did, you get your frequent flyer miles tonight. On a good news tip, we've gone a whole week without losing an officer. So thanks be to God for that one, and thanks to God for keeping our community safe for us. Today, our guest is a British-born, Marbella, Spain-raised American artist, author, and First Amendment litigant whose name has become linked with one of the most enduring free speech battles of the last decade. His journey began in 2015 with the portrait of then candidate Donald Trump, a bold, larger-than-life painting he created not just as a political statement, but as a prophetic image of what he believed was about to unfold in American history. When he submitted the portrait for exhibition at the Smithsonian Institution's National Portrait Gallery, he encountered what would become a long and ongoing legal and constitutional confrontation. So without further ado, let's bring Julian Raven to the show. Welcome, Julian.
Welcome. Well, thanks for that warm welcome, Rich. It's a pleasure to be here. And it really is an honor just to have that intro that I saw you guys rolling, and the compassion and heart that you have for those men and women who really, paying the ultimate price for their service to this country. So it's an honor to be with you guys tonight. And hopefully my story can add to the passion to pursue righteousness and justice in our country, and to see this country become, that which was the vision of our founders. So let's see what happens. Great intro. Glad to be here.
Thank you, sir. Also, Julian and I were talking in the green room. He is the father of many Liberty University students. I am a Liberty University student, so let's go Flames. Big
That's
game.
right.
Let's go. It's great to have that connection across other platforms, not just on here. So that's awesome. Julian, I gave just the elevator pitch for you right there. If you don't mind, tell us a little more about you, from as far back as you want to go to how we got to this point.
Well, summary, British born in London. And at an early age, my family moved to southern Spain, to a beautiful town called Marbella. And that's where I had the blessing and the privilege of growing up. Really is a beautiful place. Spain is a beautiful country. And culture and sunlight and history, amazing food. People are fantastic, incredible people. And the wine is wonderful. So you can't go wrong in Spain. And so I had a great time growing up there. But obviously my destiny was not to unfold in Spain. I was always frustrated. I was always feeling like it wasn't the place. It was a beautiful place, but it didn't have the ability to give me what I was searching for. And a part of my life was the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of God. I was an atheist since a young man. At the early death of my father at the age 9, became a very militant, angry young man, pursuing understanding. And like I said, in that environment, which was very hedonistic, it's all a celebration of going out and drinking and the whole 9 yards. It was hard to get a straight answer from anyone. So my frustrations, they grew and grew and grew through my teens, until I was suicidal myself in my late teens and going into my early 20s. Had a lot of transformational experiences. And one of the most remarkable was a revelation that happened on a mountain right behind where I lived in southern Spain. The mountain is called La Concha. It's absolutely beautiful, overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. And that's where God showed himself to me as I was despairing of life. I was at the end of my rope. And through meditating and contemplating nature, I was always drawn to the beauty of just the natural world, whether it was the stars twinkling at night in the night sky, or the moon reflecting on the sea, the fish under the sea. I used to spear dive a lot, and I used to be fascinated with. There was a season in this when all these jellyfish, tiny little transparent jellyfish, like by the thousands, would appear, and you'd be snorkeling through them, and I can just remember them coming right up to my mask, like this really close, and the light would be hitting it, and they would be like they were transparent, but they would also be iridescent blue and green, all these little, all flickering, and I was just like, oh my God, look at this! It's just. That was my love of nature and creation, and yet I didn't know the creator. And so that happened on the mountaintop and changed my life forever. Long story there. Some of it is in my book that I have written over the last few years, and part of it is in the prequel, which I'm currently working on now. So a remarkable life-changing experience, and that basically compelled dramatic changes in my life choices, from the drugs and the drinking and the partying and the madness. I just gave it all up, and I had a call to the mission field, and I went, on my new pursuit as now someone chasing after God. And that led me to another town in southern Spain, a city called Almeria. Then I had another encounter with God, and I ended up meeting folks who I would meet up in California in a year or two later. And my life in America would begin. And the amazing thing about God's plan, for our lives and the destiny is that, many times we can think, oh, I'm going to go here, and I was going to go to California and meet these people, and then I was going to go to preach the gospel in Mexico. I'm fluent in Spanish, and yet God had other plans, and none of that worked out, and he kept me here in the United States. And I had a lot of prejudice about the United States. Europe, unfortunately, is very poisoned against the United States, and the climate, the media, everything is sort of this is anti-Americanism. You're a kid growing up, this is what you hear. In Spain, there are 2 military bases in Spain, in Cadiz and in Madrid, and on the walls is graffiti like "Fuera Yankees" and all this stuff. But the strange thing was, Rich, is that the American people that I met in Spain, whether it was my art teacher, who was this incredible guy from California, whether it was the retired, I don't know what rank he was, military guy across the street from the Rota base in Cadiz, and his wife, a retired Pan Am pilot that was a neighbor at another time, and from Texas, and folks American people that I met were always larger than life, kind-hearted, generous people, interesting people, always just interested in what other people, it was just wonderful, and always dispelling this contradiction in your brain where you've been fed this lie basically about the United States. And American people that I met constantly, and I can go through my entire life, kids at school to adults, to the witness of just this very unique people, was something that helped me. Obviously, when I came to the United States, I was like, this is exactly what I knew about these people when I met them in Spain, and I fell in love with America. And my plan for Mexico wasn't God's plan, and God kept me here, and I fell in love with the Constitution and the laws of this country and the Christian heritage. And I was like ignorant. I didn't know anything, and I was like, wow, this is remarkable. Oh my goodness. I mean, I was just like a kid in a candy shop. The more that I read, the more that I was just like, just a passionate love for this country, its ideas and values, obviously framed in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution especially. So that was my sort of backbone for years. And then 2014, when Donald Trump, he had stood up to try to run for governor in New York State, which had got a lot of folks up here in upstate New York excited. Oh, Trump's going to run. Maybe got a businessman. Maybe we get some business wisdom in New York. We've had this madness of government going on for years. And that fell apart. He couldn't get the support of the Republican Party. And the following year was 2015, and June of 2015, there was that moment with the elevator and this guy coming down the stairs, and he makes these proclamations. And I was like, well, he didn't run for governor, but he's running for president. I think this could be pretty cool. So led me to, think about maybe painting a painting. Could be good. I knew the story of the Obama Hope poster by Shepard Fairey very well. And I knew instantly from Trump's very polarizing comments that if I was to do anything, it would cost me artistically. And I was an emerging artist. It was just the beginning of my return to painting after many years as a cabinet maker and a woodworker. And so I sort of waited, and I one day was listening to him speaking, and in my mind, I had this picture of a bald eagle swooping down to catch a falling American flag, that right before it hits the floor, it sort of reaches down and snatches this image, this picture, this flag, and his face is there, blah blah blah, as he does. And so I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And again, I dithered some more, and I was like hesitant, because I was always like, what, if I do this, I'm gonna wade into conflict. So I waited probably 4 or 5 weeks until I had, got to a point of like every day, get on with this painting, man, get on with this picture. And I was like, this like conversation in my head. Until one night I'm sitting down, middle of July, it's like 6 weeks later, maybe 4 weeks. And my daughter, who graduated last year from Liberty University. She's on the mission field, has been in Spain. Now she's studying in London. She was 13 at the time, and she walks into the room, and I was actually working on my computer researching eagles that were flying, like snatching fish out of the water to use as the backbone for this image of snatching the falling flag. And she looks over my shoulder and she says, "Dad, what are you doing? You're going to make a sculpture of the eagle?" Because at that time I was working in steel. And I said, "No, sweetheart." She didn't know anything about what I'd been thinking for 6 weeks. And she says, I sort of said to her, "No, it's more of a painting I'm working on," without saying anything more. And her out of nowhere says, "Well, Dad, maybe you should paint the painting of the eagle and give it to Donald Trump. And when he becomes president, he can hang it in the White House." And I stood there and I was like staring at this little innocent 13-year-old girl who's just like out of the mouth of babes says this statement. I was blown away, to be honest. And she shrugs her shoulder and walks out the room. And the very next morning, this was just, for me, it was life-changing. I turn on the news very early, maybe 7 a.m., and I go to CNN. And there was a video clip made by CNN, but of the Time magazine, doing a photo shoot that morning, very early in Trump Tower. And it was posted very early, and it said, "I had a visitor today," was the title. And I clicked play, and there it starts rolling, and there's Trump standing in his office in New York City, and perched on his arm is the bald eagle. I don't know if you remember that image. And so, I've been, 6 weeks with this picture in my head of this guy's face, and this eagle, and this flag. And now this thing with my daughter out of nowhere makes this comment without knowing what's going on. I mean, I was just blown away. It was like this utter, and then the next morning, the very next morning, there's it's the most unusual thing that he should be in his office with a bald eagle perched on his arm. I mean, when's the last time you saw anyone, posing, or anyone with a live eagle on your arm? Right. And I'm just like, I literally, Rich, I thought it was a fake. I thought someone had photoshopped it. And someone was playing a trick on me. I mean, I was like, no way. I was staring at the screen like I couldn't believe it. So I run down to my art studio where I am now. I have this great space, old warehouse that I renovated. And I start work on this massive 7 by 15 foot stretcher frame. That's how big the painting is. And I start work. I didn't even know what this painting was going to be, how I was going to do it. I'd been just started the night before to formulate some ideas. So I just started painting it. And I worked for a lot. I worked night and day for nearly 2 months. I could not stop painting. I could not sleep hardly. I'd get up at like 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning, and I would be walking like a zombie down to the studio. My wife's like, "Sweetheart, where are you going?" And I'm like, "I gotta go and paint." She's like, "You were right." It's like I wasn't myself. I knew that this man was going to be president. And at that time, there were 17 other Republican candidates and 4 Democrat candidates. And by the time I revealed the painting in the beginning of October of 2015, I knew it. All the folks, was a mockery and laughter, and I was just people I knew says, "Oh, you can't do this. This is crazy. This is a publicity stunt that he's doing." And I'm like, "Well, I believe he's going to win." And sure enough, that whole year, the year of campaigning, and I end up meeting Trump in Trump Tower. Providentially is an amazing story. These stories are all detailed in my book, which is called Odious and Cerberus, an American Immigrant's Odyssey and His Free Speech Legal War Against Smithsonian Corruption. And I would just hold it up here for you folks. And that's me with a little less hair. But there I am in my battle mode, which I'll get to in a second. So that, is a little background. As a newborn citizen, because I became a citizen that October in 2015 on Constitution Day, September the 17th, I believe it was, 2015, my paperwork came through and I became a citizen. And so I'm in the midst of painting this hugely patriotic image. And then I'm here I am now pledging allegiance and renouncing my allegiance to kings and queens in Europe and the whole nine yards, and this weeping at this ceremony and this this real honor that it was. It was such a big deal for me. And I'm in the midst of painting this painting, and in the painting, there's the flag and the faded flag and the torn flag and the new flag and the Constitution. I mean, it's layered in symbolism that was speaking of the zeitgeist of where America was at that time. And I was weaving that into this image inside of the large composition of the face and the eagle, 9-foot eagle, and this sort of surreal American flag, which is both torn and faded, but then beginning its new creation. It was a picture of trying to paint making America great again. So I then have this wonderful ceremony, and I then go and campaign. I'm in Iowa, and I'm the first person in Iowa as the Iowa caucuses start, and they're on the ground, and I'm traveling with this massive painting and this huge truck I rented, and I slapped vinyls on the side, and I have this American adventure. That's just this exciting political adventure that I was all new to me. I really didn't know much, and I just had a lot of faith. And I met wonderful people, and I met just Iowans out in the tundra of Iowa in the brutal winter, just like this bare, flat state, just snow, nothing. Like you'd have like a tree in the middle of nowhere, like a little house, and they'd like plant a tree there, and the rest was just flat cornfields. And but the Iowa people, they were just, again, they were these gritty American gunslinging. It was like a film set everywhere you went, just like this. You could have had a Clint Eastwood movie going on all the time in the background. So really, for me, somebody who's the immigrant, grew up on a diet of U.S. movies, which feeds you all the imagery. As you come here and walk into those pictures, it's just like, wow, this is what it is. And so, it was, for me, I've just had this wonderful journey, and it didn't stop. I had a lot of really good things happen. I had a lot of disappointments, a lot of heartache, a lot of people didn't understand, how could you be painting a painting of this guy that he's going to win? What are you talking about? And, I mean, I've been through a lot even in that year. The highlights happened the following year, or that same year, sorry, now in June and July, where the originator of the Obama Hope poster by Shepard Fairey, the guy who actually commissioned it, he calls me up and says, I want this painting in this art show in LA and Pasadena at Politicon in 2016, the art of politics with all the nation's top political artists, and here they want my painting as the main painting. He says he can't stand Trump and all this blah blah blah. He's a completely he's a hardcore leftist, but we got on great. He was honest, he was conversant, he was respectful. Very few people I met like that from what I would view as people with opposite ideas. So I had some really remarkable experiences, both in LA and then in Cleveland, Ohio at the RNC. I was elected as an alternate delegate for New York State. Yeah, that was really cool. And but again, I began to, I was listening to one of your shows before, and when you deal, and you guys obviously in the military, you have the politics of the human being in politics. And the wherever you go, no matter even if it's in the Republican Party, which I was at that time, I'm no longer. I'm someone who's politically, homeless right now. I just couldn't bear it, to be honest with you. But unfortunately, meeting this sort of the sinister side of politics is really discouraging, and I think I may be a little naive. You go into things like, skipping and sort of, with a very positive attitude. And it's like, it's brutal, and people are brutal, and the lust for power is brutal. And it causes people to forget themselves and forget the laws and the principles that we should be standing on. The vision of America that I have is from reading about our founders and the great men that forged this nation, with their bare hands, basically. And that comes into conflict a lot of times with what I see happening today, and that's pretty discouraging. And then obviously my story is that how it comes into massive conflict when I then, after this journey and this political pilgrimage, and Trump wins, and everyone's like, "You were right." They're no longer laughing at me now. Now they're just silent. It's like the mockery ended, and they're like silent. But then I was like, what am I going to do with this painting? It's massive. In the frame, Rich, it's 8 by 16 feet. I mean, it's enormous. And, that's, to me, was an expression of not just America, but what Trump represents and who he is as a person, and that whole, so it's very symbolic of this whole zeitgeist of America that we were experiencing. And I had, along my journey across the country, I had met people from Iowa to California. They would say to me, "Oh, this should be in the Smithsonian." I didn't even know what that was. I knew it was a museum in DC that maybe had space rockets in it. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I had no idea. I was like, what is this? I had no idea. So I'm just a greenhorn, basically. Yes, I'm just so. But I would hear it should be in the Smithsonian. I heard it 2-3 times very clearly across the country. So after he won, and I was like sort of bummed out for a few weeks after November 2016. I'm like, what am I going to do with this massive painting now? Sort of, it's in my studio staring at me all day. It's like I want it like gone. So I think of the Smithsonian, I research it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, they have a national portrait gallery in DC. I was like, wow, I had no idea. Then I researched the National Portrait Gallery, and like, oh my goodness, the same portrait my portrait was shown with in LA, the Obama Hope poster was shown for the inauguration, the historic election. Wonderful. 2008 election of Barack Obama. It was 2009, the inauguration, and 2013 inauguration. They showed this political campaign portrait as a tribute to this historic election of this man. I was like, wow. Here I am, it's just another portrait of a journey and a political campaign, and the historic nature of this is unprecedented, a non-elected person winning. And so I go to all the political people I met on my journey in New York State, the representatives and senators and congressmen and RNC people and radio hosts and some art collectors. I have them all write these glowing letters of recommendation, all publicly supporting me. Yeah, this is a great idea as a tribute. And I put this big fat application together to get it to the Smithsonian. I didn't know how to do that, so I go to the local museum in Corning, New York, which is called the Rockwell, which is a Smithsonian affiliate. And right then I had a sense, Rich, I said, I'm going to start to have a little taste of what I know the art world is like already by experience. And sure enough, when I knock on the door there, that's where it all starts to go off the rails. That's a whole other story. I'm not going to get into those details. Again, that's in my book.
I'm going to share the screen with your picture right here, your painting. Hopefully it comes up. There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. You can see it there, everyone. It's a great painting. Like you said, it's huge. Huge.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the thing with it is, when you look at it like that, you see a compression of the image.
Right.
Yeah, it's okay. It's great. It's you. The thing with this painting is, it's when you see the size of it, and it's the impact is so, like, you see it now. It's nice. It's when you see the painting in life. And I've seen people. I watch people react to it, and from people like one guy, like pacing up and down in front of it, like rubbing his arms, like, man, my hairs are all standing on their ends, like this. And he's like, another woman come into my studio when I had it on show, and she comes in and she stands there and she goes completely silent, like, like uncomfortably silent, like dumb. And I thought, oh dear, I don't know if I've offended her. And suddenly she makes an about turn and she walks out. And I was like, whoa. It's like, whoa, I had no idea, no read on what went on there, until I got an email later that night. She apologized. She said, I'm really so sorry. I was left speechless and I couldn't speak, and I had to leave. Yeah, so I had stuff like this going on now. I had the complete opposite as well. Hatred and screaming and cursing, and I want to take a marker. And I had this one show in DC, and the guy that was guarding the portrait, he came up to me and said, I had someone offer me $1,000 in cash yesterday to take it, to look away, to let them paint a Hitler's mustache on this guy's face with a Sharpie. I mean, that type of, so the extremes, art has this power to just draw this out of people. So all of that's my background. I get this application, I get it to the Smithsonian, the journey, and let me just say this: there obviously is a lot of details, and I know that we're on a time crunch here, right? We have about half an hour. What is our?
We got about 28 minutes left.
28 minutes. Yeah, I'll just get to the point, the massive conflict, and then fast forward, because this is, I've been in this now for 9 years. When I approached the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery with this application and with all the details and with all the letters of recommendation and this whole thing, I called the next day, because the person was another director of the Smithsonian who had forwarded the application to the gallery director. And I called up the gallery in good faith the next morning to say, this is who I am. My application was forwarded yesterday to you. Here's my phone number. If there's anything that's missing, if something I can do, just show good faith. You want to. And it was a secretary, and I didn't expect much to hear, maybe an email back or something if there was. And I expected some type of a process to take place of consideration. Well, 15 minutes later, I get the call, and it's an Australian woman. Her name was Kim Sayet. She's the former director now of the National Portrait Gallery. She calls me up, and it's basically an 11-minute argument that takes off. This woman calls me, this is just after the election happened. So there are people that were so furious, and she's like taking it upon herself to call up the artist, some guy I'm not just an artist from upstate New York and in the woods in Elmira. And she calls him up to just, as I felt like she just was coming to give her peace of mind and rip to shreds my work and everything, which she did. And the objections that she gave, one after the other, were all arbitrary, were all made up. They weren't Smithsonian policy. They weren't the curatorial standards of consideration for portraiture exhibition or show. There were nothing, absolutely nothing. It was from just one after the other, made up. Again, I go into great detail in that in my story. And, from saying it was too political, and then I say too political, you had the Obama Hope poster twice on show, and you're telling me mine's too political and that politics is okay? She was getting more frustrated the more that I refuted her arbitrary objections. She got more frustrated. Her voice went up. And at the end of this phone call, she raises her voice. She says, I am the director of the National Portrait Gallery. Your application will go no further. You can appeal it all you want. And she hangs up the phone. Huh. And, hearing your story, in the interview I heard before, when you deal with authority, and even in the military, as you guys obviously know, that, unfortunately, in my experience, it's few people who, the higher they get, keep their sanity. Abraham Lincoln said, men can endure, most men can endure adversity, like it's common, we can get through it in some way. But he said, if you really want to know what a man's about, give him power, and that's obviously man or woman. And here we have this example of this just hostile director of the, I'm sorry, I have great respect for authority. When that phone call rang and I said hello, and it was like, I'm the director, then I stood up, I was like, man, this is the director of the National Portrait Gallery. I was like, I'm here, I was like, all, complete, honoring the position and who this, I was like, it was surprising that I'd even get the call. And in that position where you're showing deference and great respect to the authority, and then they take that to abuse you and to violate you and trample your rights, which she did. After that phone call, I felt like I was violated. I felt like it was like I couldn't speak. I was stunned. And it took days for me to even tell my wife. And when I told her, she's like, what? She blew a circuit. She couldn't believe it. And then weeks later, when I started to recover, now we're late into December. That was December 1st, 2016. I keep hearing in my head, you can appeal it all you want. Yeah, I'm going to appeal. How do I appeal? And that began my journey of appealing inside the Smithsonian. What is the Smithsonian? Who owns it? Who runs it? finding out there's a board of regents. Oh my goodness, John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, is the Chancellor of the Smithsonian. Great. He's going to hear my case. I'll appeal to him, and I'll appeal to the Vice President, and at the time was Joe Biden, and appeal to the 3 members of Congress and 3 members of the Senate, 9 members of the public. And I got 17 packages together with, all my, the letters of recommendation and what she did and the application and copies of the print. And I mailed all this stuff off to DC, my appeal, hoping that they would say, oh my goodness, this is an outrage. How could someone behave like that? We have standards, we have processes. And she just cut through it all. And she just went there, went for the jugular, because obviously she had her hatred for the content of the painting. And well, that didn't happen. I get this weird letter about 10 days later from some other official, not a regent in the Smithsonian. And he basically says, well, they handed me your letter. He never considered it an appeal. And after a few lines, he said, I agree with everything Kim Sayed did. Goodbye. And that was it. The letter was just a slam door in my face again. And I was stunned. I was like, and then there was no answering to my correspondence. There was no reply. I couldn't reply to it. There was nothing. Just like, we agree with everything she did, basically. And you're like, what? I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I can't believe this. So then you can appeal it all you want. Okay, well, how am I going to do that? What do I do? And again, I'm just a simple guy. I don't have resources. I can't hire a lawyer and all this type of stuff. So I get on the internet and I start doing the research, and then it's like, aha, I can sue them in federal court. So I start, trying to draft a brief. I mean, this is all by myself. And I filed my first lawsuit in the wrong court. And you just, yeah. So you're learning, and I did a lot of learning. Basically, went to law school for the last 9 years, and that was the beginning of my legal journey. And that battle became a revelation to me, because I don't know if you ever see that film, Aaron Brockovich. You see that movie? Really cool film. And what really spoke to me and ministered is that, here's this story, this very interesting person that she was, coincidentally ends up in this legal firm by whatever happenstance, and they pile all these papers on her desk, and she's just having to read through it. And her ability was just, she could actually just read through the stuff and see that there was an inconsistent, something was off. Everyone else missed it. And she could say, there's something off here. And this began to happen with me with the Smithsonian. The more that I studied, I'm like, hold on a second. Hold on. And I'm like, something is very, very off here and wrong. And I began to realize, as I learned, that the big issue that I was facing at the Smithsonian more than anything was basically about the legal entity status of the Smithsonian. What is the Smithsonian Institution? What is it? And now, 9 years later, I'm pretty confident that I know. But when I speak to the average American from this, whether it's the streets of DC, right in front of the Smithsonian, I've interviewed people, I've spoken to people, I've spoken to politicians, and I've spoken to lawyers, and I've spoken to, you name it. And most people have it completely wrong.
Wow.
And it is a fascinating experience to see how time and neglect and corruption and abuse has allowed this legal drift to take place, that has allowed the Smithsonian Institution to drift into a legal no man's land, where it's been used as a political football. It's been used for all sorts of corrupt purposes. On my website, which is smithsoninstitution.com, and that's not Smithsonian, it's Smithson, after James Smithson, another British guy who was the guy who founded the Smithsonian. He sent his fortune here when he died to found the Smithsonian Institution. I have newspaper articles from the Washington's Daily Star from all the 1800s, 1900s, but there's one article on the front page, 1927, I believe it is, and it is an article that was written expressing exactly what I just said to you, that even back then and right at the founding, because the federal government was the trustee of this private institution, people by mistake would assume that it is a federal agency. And right in this story, even there in the front page of the story, it says people from the Midwest, they come to Washington, they see the White House and the Capitol, and then they're right in the middle of it all, there's the Smithsonian, and they instinctively think it's a government bureau. And the article says, no, you're wrong. It's private. It's a private trust. That's all it is. It's a charity. It's a private charity that the government has nothing to do with, except the government accepted the role of trustee of the private charity. It's like the trustee of a church. It's like the government has no bearing on the Smithsonian, on the content of the Smithsonian. It's a private entity. And yet over the years, and I have statements by President, Chancellor, Supreme Court Justice William Howard Taft in the 1920s at that same time, stating categorically, the Smithsonian Institution is not and never has been considered a government bureau. It is a private institution under the guardianship of the government. That's all it is. It's a private institution. And this identity duality has caused it to become influenced by the federal government. It was never designed to function with government taxpayer dollars. It was designed to function on the bequest of James Smithson. He gave $541,000 in 1836 to the United States. It was actually from his will from 1829, but it took quite a few years for it to happen and get to the US. Approximately $60 million in today's money. That money was sufficient for the institution to run independently as designed by the original testator, who's James Smithson. But what happened? Congress borrowed the money when it arrived. They said, we're going to pay 6% interest on the loan every year, and the Smithsonian can run on 6% interest. And it was built on 6% interest for years until that was obviously not enough for the plans that they had. And at some point in the 1920s and 30s, people started appropriating taxpayer money. And this is the weird sort of the irony of it. The gift to the American people that the Smithsonian Institution was, today, the American people pay for. It's like it was a gift to us. And now you're paying for it with your tax dollars. So the confusion of the entity status became the core cardinal issue of my lawsuits. I went all the way to the Supreme Court, to John Roberts again. They rejected my petition for certiorari. He had to recuse himself. It's all documented because he's the chancellor of the Smithsonian. And my question to them was, what is the Smithsonian Institution? By law, by the precedent, especially under Marbury versus Madison, that whole precedent that the Supreme Court's job is to say what the law is. Nobody has ever sued the Smithsonian like I have. Nobody has ever brought the Smithsonian to the Supreme Court. Nobody's ever asked this question for them, and they are under obligation, and they refuse to do it. They refuse to answer the question. Obviously, I'm a nobody. I'm just some guy, some immigrant from the woods of Elmira, and they like this kicked it to the curb. But that question was still unanswered. I sued the same woman again in 2022. She blocked me on Twitter. So it became a free speech issue on Twitter from the government-created website that was government-run under the Smithsonian. She blocked me there. That's a whole other story. And now I'm in my third lawsuit, just filed recently, because with the re-election of President Trump, he went after the Smithsonian. He said, yeah, a lot of people have said this woman needs to go. And he pointed his finger at Kim Sayett. Now, people like Ed Martin, who is in the DOJ right now, I was on his radio show 2 or 3 years ago with my book. He knows my story. They got educated. They're like, oh my goodness. Well, now he's this whole focus on the Smithsonian right now. Never before has it been so scrutinized. And now my recent lawsuit is because the federal judge, that although and it's so bizarre what he did, Rich, is that Trevor McFadden in 2018, he ruled that Kim Sayett was odious and partisan in her actions against me. So he said she was a partisan activist, basically. And then the Smithsonian kept her on for 8 years. They kept her in employ. And then Trump comes out and says she's a partisan and she needs to go. trying to fire her. He says, I fired her. He didn't have the authority. The president, the executive has no authority over the Smithsonian. Again, it's a private charity. You have no right to be meddling. The president's intention's good. I think it's an express of the will of the people. That's good. But you have no legal authority to reach over the mall and dabble. It's a private charity. But anyway, he put in motion the attention, and the whole conflict started, and this whole Smithsonian, like, we have the right to hire and fire, and all this type of thing went on. And then she resigned, which was wonderful, great news for me. But it didn't answer the question. Right. And so I have resued John Roberts as chancellor of the Smithsonian. Right now, this is the lawsuit. They are about to respond any day now. This is breaking news because the government has my summonses now for the last 3 weeks. I've sued the secretary of the Smithsonian, Lonnie Bunch, Dr. Richard Curran, which was the guy originally who kicked me to the curb, because the Smithsonian is a private charity. It's a trust, and its guiding laws are the laws that govern private charities, trust law. The duty of care, the duty of loyalty, the duty of impartiality, the duty of administration, all the duties that cover the administration of private charitable trusts. And I have it all documented. The Smithsonian itself acknowledges it. The courts ruled wrongly. And I have then statements by Chief Justice Warren Burger saying, the courts get it wrong. They don't know what they're doing with the Smithsonian. Everyone's got this wrong. It's all wrong. Even by the former Smithsonian Chancellor and Chief Justice says in a speech, the courts get it wrong what the Smithsonian is. And he ends up by saying the Smithsonian is a private charity. It has nothing to do with the government. That was Warren Burger in the 1970s. So then my court case in 2018 said, no, the judge came and said, oh, the Smithsonian is the government through and through. And you're like, it's not the government, it's private. But he ruled like that because it was the only way that he could deprive me of my First Amendment speech rights, because if it truly is a government agency, there's government speech, basically. You can't, you don't have First Amendment rights if you walk into Congress and start yelling and screaming. They can do what they want. You're just, the government has its place to operate like that. But the Smithsonian is not it. So I've sued them again. And I also added Congress for their inaction. And I also added the president for his breaching of trust, and placed it before the judge, Tanya Chutkan, who is renowned sort of maybe as an activist judge. But for her, I have a petition right now, a motion for her to certify that question as to what is the Smithsonian institution, that she would ask the Supreme Court, because they're ignoring me. I'm a nobody. I've asked this 3 times and they've ignored me completely. Now my motion is, it's going to put her on the spot. Are you going to ask them the question? Because if we litigate now, this question is still unresolved. It's incorrect what's on the docket, what Judge McFadden wrote. It's wrong. It's unlawful. You need the Supreme Court to say what the law is about the Smithsonian Institution. And that now is pending. And then the next motion was an injunction, even against the president, say that what the president is doing is as correct as it may be in spirit to rectify what he disagrees with in his mind, has nothing to do with the federal government. It's like the government reaching into the pulpit of a church and telling the pastor what to preach. Whether you hate the content in there or not, that's fine. You can have that opinion, but you have no legal right to tell the operation of a private charity what they can do. There are other ways that they could change the content, etc. But this is the problem, Rich. Even the president's got it all wrong, because he thinks it's an arm of the federal government. He thinks it's an agency of the government, and it's not.
And that stems from our education system having breaks in it and not actually teaching actual constitutional law or actual U.S. history to show you who owns what in the zoo, who has what in the zoo, and not understanding that. And that stems way back now. We've lost our way with that, and not having pride in what our history is and learning from our mistakes and moving forward. And that I totally understand that President Trump wouldn't understand, because he grew up in New York. So New York has the same education system as New Jersey did, where I grew up. And we were never taught that the Smithsonian was a trust. I had to learn that on my own. I grew up having a wife as a history teacher. That kind of helped me out a lot too, because she kind of things in the head, and she has all those Jeopardy answers in her head. But we do have a question from the audience. This is from Jake Holland. He's from Cadiz, Kentucky. In regards to the U.S. First Amendment, What are your thoughts about what is going on with the speech police, specifically the recent arrest of Graham Linehan? Thanks for the question, Jake.
Can you repeat? You cut in and out a little bit there, Rich. Can you just read just read it again? It would be easy.
In regards to the U.S. First Amendment, what are your thoughts about what is going on in Britain with the speech police, specifically the recent arrest of Graham Linehan?
Well, I'm not sure what about Graham Linehan, but I can tell you that England is just, I'm a preacher of the gospel above all things, and our American heritage is by and large greatly founded on the British ideas, whether it was Locke as the philosopher who inspired Jefferson, et cetera, to the British culture and British ideas and the whole. That's in the British pilgrims that came over here. They fled England's corrupt church to Holland and came here to build a city on a hill, their vision, so England, with such a marvelous Christian heritage, has lost the plot. They have lost their minds. And what it is, in my opinion, is that they have departed from God to the degree where they have no idea of what they stand for or stand, and they just go with this strange, fear-driven attempt to control things that, it's offending this person. And the English, they're very, the English are very much like this. And now it's like on steroids. It's like so sickening, because I believe that fundamentally, originally, our ideas as a Western culture were founded on biblical ideas and biblical values and principles, that the individual was responsible to police themselves and control their mouth and their tongue and be men and women of honor and dignity and morality. And those things were cherished in Britain. They were cherished. They were, when you see all the old England and the whole sort of Baroque, the way they used to dress and they carry themselves bowing and all this sort of it was all like an expression of ideas that had come down to them, that they had embraced originally from a Christian culture. And so free speech and the ideas of freedom guarded by self-policing moral people, that concept has gone out the window. There was a great New York politician, I think it was Charles Winthrop, who said that men will either be controlled or governed by the word of God within them or by the bayonet from without. And we are seeing that in the United Kingdom now, where the law enforcement is so off the wall. They have lost their priorities, and they cannot discern or judge right from wrong or truth from error or freedom from bondage. And all they do is just constantly shut down the people who are speaking the truth. Insanity has gripped Europe, has gripped England. And I think that the best part for America is to realize that's what has begun to poison this country in the last 20, 30 years. And we may end up like them, but maybe this country will be the place where it doesn't,
Exactly. Jake says, thank you, Julian, for the answer. Great question, Jake. And that really helped segue to, I guess, our final questions here. We're at 7 minutes left in the show now. Julian, that's an amazing journey you were on with the painting. With your start of the painting, actually from way back when you lived in Spain, when you were talking about the Contra Mountain, I had to look it up because I didn't know where it was, so I had to look it up on Google. And the view just on the picture was amazing. I can imagine what you saw when you were sitting on top of that mountain, looking out into all the beauty of the Mediterranean. And then I thought, hey, is that on the Camino Trail or part of it? And then, of course, Dr. Google told me, no, it's not. So things that are both hiking related, but that Contra Mountain looks amazing. And if I ever get over there, I'm going to do a little bit of both. So thank you for sharing that journey with us. And then, of course, you flew over to the California. I've only been there for training, never had the opportunity to live there. So from training out there, I really hate California just because what we go through when we're training out there. But I know there's good spots in California. There's beautiful spots. And then, of course, there's the cities. And that's the other thing you see most times is the cities. So, Julian, as we start to wrap up, what's the best way for the audience to maybe contact you if they want to chat with you about this battle you've been in, or if they just want to talk to you about art?
Well, my art website is julianraven.com. And I do want to make this point, and I have been in this field long enough that even in the areas that you guys tackle with the PTSD, the art as a process and as medicine is a huge facet to add to that solution. You know, that the creative process is scientifically proven to be a mechanism for healing for the soul and for the mind, for those suffering obviously from trauma and everything. So on the art side is julianraven.com is there, but on the legal battle side, it's smithsoninstitution.com. I also have a Substack page, Julian Raven. It's called The Voice in the Wilderness. It's like that for me for many years, because until this is resolved, it's like I'm a guy with two heads. People are just like, hey, can't possibly be right. He's this strange guy from the woods. And you're like, yeah, but hold on a second. It's like, it's right there in black and white. You just read it for yourself. I'm just pointing you to what's already written, you know. So I want to share real quick though an anecdote that's really funny. In my recent step with suing President Trump as basically invading the private trust. It's private property that the federal government, the executive, is trying to meddle with. There is a law that is activated in trust law that if somebody breaches the trust like this, like the president is doing, the court can actually appoint them as what's called a constructive trustee, where they actually become responsible for the trust. And the irony of it all is that at the end of it, the president may end up being responsible to actually enforce that the will of James Smithson, not the will of Donald Trump, not the will of the government, the will of James Smithson is taking place. Can you imagine they give charge to the president, say, well, Mr. Trump, you're now the trustee, but you can't do it. They like tie us, but it would be a remarkable, what a story. You paint this portrait of this guy in 2015, and now nearly 10 years later, it's like now he's there fighting for this museum that they booted him. They rejected him. You know, that painting was number 4 on his list of 17 reasons to fire Kim Sayed. My story was right there in the White House.
Wow.
You know, so it's he knows exactly the whole deal. There was a copy in Trump Tower for years hanging, so he knows the deal. But you know, it's what's important to me as Americans, and this is what we all have to contend for, and why you guys do the great honorable thing that you do, and pay the ultimate price, you know, to those who have made America's. Because if we don't have the rule of law, if we don't all respect and bow and submit equally to the rule of law, the president submit to the rule of law. It's a trust. It's private. Get your hands off it. Do it legally. Do this other means or channels. Say, you know, have the opinion and blast it all you want. That's great. The opinion has weight in itself. But if we don't respect the rule of law at the end of the day, then we are lost, and we'll end up like they are in Europe. They've lost the plot. It's staggering to me that human beings and men and women with history like they have in England or Spain can abandon it with such fervor in the way that they have, and completely lost the plot. So my hope and prayer as a preacher here in the United States is that we do have a real turning back to those biblical ideas and values and the morality that the scriptures gave this country. I believe that's what made America great. See, the make America great again for me was, you know, the stuff is all fine, but it's the values and the principles and the ideas that were framed by our founders and by the great men and women, the preachers of those times, that made the ideas that America was built upon, the foundation, which I believe is what gives us the ideas that we have today, or should, and the freedoms that we enjoy today. So that's my little story, folks.
Outstanding. Julian, thanks for sharing it. And my last question to you is one I ask every guest that's on the Misfit Nation. What's 3 things the Misfit Nation can start doing tomorrow to be better humans?
Yeah, I love that part. I saw it in the beginning, and as well that's your emphasis. I think is beautiful. To be better, obviously, as a man of faith, you know, our efforts on earth, if it's not God breathed, if we're not connected with God through the Savior of the world, Jesus Christ, it's all in vain. It's just man's efforts. And so the first thing is get connected with the source, plug in. And that's the most important part of recovery and healing and restoration in our minds. And I've been through that. I was a lost, you know, atheist, as I shared. So God can do remarkable works in the human heart, and without it, it can just be human effort, which can, you can accomplish certain things, but it can be void at the end. That would be the first thing. The second thing is I know, and I heard it so many times about the journey for veterans to coming back from such extreme experiences in war to then the mundane experience of civilian life is such a difficult transition. And yet, once again, finding the purpose in God is where the answer is. Getting involved in, for example, because our nation is so big and so sick, there are so many civic projects that are crying out for people to get involved in and to bury their lives in. I've got this is my battle. I've been 9 years at it. I'm not letting go by the grace of God until I see the victory that I hope he's going to give me in my life. Maybe it doesn't happen in my lifetime. I don't know. But it's a worthy cause because it's the values that I hold and cherish. So for those folks that are struggling, it's embrace a project that's bigger than you. Go out. If it's every pothole in your city, start there. There's always work to do in our communities, and you can be as sick as a dog, and just like, oh, I can't, and just get out, then start doing something. And healing comes when you engage yourself in those type of proactive external battles. It draws you out of yourself, because you might not be hurling grenades and letting off rounds, but there are real battles in our culture and society that can be engaged in a different way, but still with the degree of purpose that draws the man out of himself so that he can become everything that God has designed him to do. And the third point, as the Misfit Nation, is obviously getting, I feel at home as somewhat, I feel as a misfit most of the time. When I saw the name of your broadcast, I was like, oh, that's great. I bet I fit right in there. It's like, keep bringing voices on who want to challenge the status quo, who want to stand up and give a platform to people, because many times if you are an outlier, people don't want to hear from you. They wait on the sidelines, and once you win, they'll be like, "Oh, this is great. We were supporting you all along." Yeah. And until that happens, you're on the outside. So the Misfits can always be of great encouragement, as I am today, encouraged to be here, and it's an honor for me, and just to keep giving a platform to other voices to burn bright in the darkness, because we need it. It's the only way that we can see our way forward. So those 3 points there, Rich.
Outstanding. Thank you, Julian. And again, Julian, thank you for taking some of your time from beautiful Elmira, New York, to hang out with us tonight and keep up your good fight you're doing there with the Institute and the laws and the legal battles until you win. Misfit Nation, thanks for tuning in tonight. Remember, a day tomorrow with you is better than a day without you. If you're in that darkness, just like Julian just said, and you need to find that purpose, or you need to make that phone call, dial 988. Take option 1 if you're a veteran. If you're afraid if you press that button, you won't be able to have your guns, then just follow one of the other prompts and just get the help you need. If you don't want to talk to them, reach out to us, Misfit Nation. info@themisfitnation.com, Steven@themisfitnation.com, or Jake@themisfitnation.com. We will talk to you. We will get you the help you need. We will stay with you until that help arrives. So keep that in mind and stay with us. Be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because you know who we are.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.